A war that lasted centuries, knights, kings, and warriors clashing over one of the most sacred places on earth. The Crusades were not just battles, they were a fight for power, religion, and control of the Holy Land. But behind the legendary knights and grand battles, there were betrayals, secret alliances, and shocking events that reshaped the world. What really happened during the Crusades, and how did they change history forever? Stay with us as we uncover the true story of one of the most brutal and complex wars in human history. The First Crusade, a call to war. It all began in 1095 when Pope Urban II addressed a massive crowd in Clermont, France. His speech ignited Europe with a sense of purpose and urgency. He declared that Christianity was under attack, that Muslim forces controlled Jerusalem, and that it was the duty of every Christian warrior to march to the Holy Land and reclaim it. The motivation: holy war or political power. The Pope framed the crusade as a holy mission, offering spiritual rewards. Those who fought in the crusade would have their sins forgiven. But there were also political and economic motives. For knights, the Crusades offered a chance for wealth, land, and glory. For the Catholic Church, it was a way to expand its influence and unite Europe under religious leadership. And for common people, it was an escape from poverty and feudal oppression, the journey to the Holy Land. The First Crusade was not one army, but multiple waves of forces marching towards Jerusalem. The first group, known as the People's Crusade, was led by Peter the Hermit, a charismatic preacher. However, these early crusaders were mostly poor peasants and untrained fighters. They never even made it to the Holy Land. Many were killed by local armies before reaching Jerusalem. The real military campaign began in 1096 when European knights from France, Germany, and Italy organized professional forces. Their journey was brutal, crossing mountains, deserts, and hostile territory, facing starvation, disease, and constant ambushes. But their faith and determination kept them moving forward. The Siege of Antioch, a test of will. Before reaching Jerusalem, the Crusaders besieged the city of Antioch, one of the most important strongholds in the Middle East. The siege lasted 8 long months, with Crusaders starving, freezing, and even resorting to cannibalism to survive. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, they discovered the Holy Lance, the spear believed to have pierced the side of Jesus Christ. This discovery reignited their faith, and they launched a final attack, capturing the city in 1098. The capture of Jerusalem, a bloody victory. By the time the Crusaders reached Jerusalem in 1099, they were exhausted but determined. The city was heavily fortified, defended by Egyptian forces. After a fierce siege, the Crusaders breached the walls and unleashed a massacre. Men, women, and children, both Muslims and Jews, were slaughtered in the streets. One Crusader described the horror, saying the blood ran ankle-deep through the city. For the Crusaders, it was seen as divine justice. For the Muslim world, it was an unforgivable atrocity. Jerusalem was now in Christian hands. But how long could they hold it? Saladin and the fall of Jerusalem. After nearly a century of Christian rule, Jerusalem was once again in danger. The Muslim world had been divided, but that changed with the rise of Saladin, one of the greatest military leaders in history. Who was Saladin? Born in 1137 in Tikrit, modern-day Iraq, Saladin was a Kurdish warrior who rose through the ranks of the Zengid dynasty before establishing the powerful Ayyubid Sultanate. Unlike many ruthless warlords of the time, Saladin was known for his chivalry, wisdom, and tolerance, gaining both the respect of his allies and the grudging admiration of his enemies. His goal? To unite the Muslim world under one banner and reclaim Jerusalem from the Crusaders. The Battle of Hattin, breaking the Crusaders. By 1187, Saladin had built a formidable army and launched his campaign against the Christian kingdom of Jerusalem. His greatest victory came at the Battle of Hattin in July 1887. Saladin trapped the Crusader forces near the Sea of Galilee, cutting them off from water supplies. Under the scorching summer sun, the Crusaders, led by King Guy of Lusignan, were dehydrated, exhausted, and surrounded. When the battle began, they stood no chance. Saladin's forces decimated the Crusader army, capturing King Guy, the Grand Master of the Templars, and other high-ranking nobles. The true cross, the most sacred Christian relic, was seized by Saladin's forces and paraded through the streets as a symbol of victory. With the Crusaders broken, Jerusalem was now within Saladin's grasp. The Siege of Jerusalem, a different kind of conquest. Unlike the brutal massacre of 1099, when the Crusaders slaughtered Muslims and Jews, Saladin took a different approach. His army surrounded Jerusalem, giving the city's defenders little hope. But instead of wiping out the population, Saladin offered terms. If the Christians surrendered peacefully, their lives would be spared. After days of negotiation, on October 2nd, 1187, Jerusalem fell without mass bloodshed. Unlike the Crusaders' violent conquest nearly a century earlier, there was no massacre. Instead, Saladin allowed Christian civilians to leave safely and even permitted pilgrims to visit the holy sites. His mercy stunned the Christian world. While some Crusaders saw him as an enemy, others, including Richard the Lionheart, would later respect him as a noble adversary. The Christian response, the Third Crusade, begins. The fall of Jerusalem shocked Europe. News of the defeat spread rapidly, and Pope Gregory VIII called for another crusade, this time led by some of the greatest kings of the medieval world. Richard the Lionheart of England, Philip II of France, Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire. This new crusade, known as the Third Crusade, would lead to one of the greatest rivalries in history, Richard versus Saladin. But could the Crusaders reclaim Jerusalem once more? The Crusades take a dark turn. By the early 13th century, the Crusades had shifted far from their original purpose. What had begun as a holy war to reclaim the Holy Land soon became a war of greed, political ambition, and betrayal. Crusaders turned their swords not just against Muslims but against fellow Christians, changing the course of European and Middle Eastern history forever. The Fourth Crusade, a Christian war against Christians. In 1202, Pope Innocent III called for another crusade to reclaim Jerusalem. However, what happened instead shocked the Christian world. The Crusaders, unable to fund their expedition, struck a deal with the powerful Venetians, who had built a fleet to transport them. In exchange for passage, the Crusaders agreed to attack Zara, a Christian city allied with Hungary. Pope Innocent III excommunicated the entire army for attacking fellow Christians, but the Crusaders pressed on. Their next target? Constantinople, the greatest Christian city in the East. In 1204, the Crusaders stormed the Byzantine capital, looting churches, palaces, and relics. They slaughtered civilians, burned libraries, and plundered treasures that had stood for centuries. The Byzantine Empire was left in ruins, its power broken. Rather than fighting for faith, the Crusaders had turned into mercenaries for hire. The Children's Crusade, a tragic disaster. Perhaps the most tragic episode of the Crusades was the Children's Crusade of 1212. Thousands of young boys and girls, convinced that they could reclaim Jerusalem through faith alone, set out on a journey across Europe. But they never made it. Many died from starvation or harsh weather. Others were captured and sold into slavery by traders who preyed on their innocence. The Children's Crusade was a failure, a grim reminder that the Crusades had lost all sense of their original mission. The fall of the Crusader states. As time passed, the Crusader states in the Holy Land grew weaker. The once mighty Christian kingdom of Jerusalem fell into disarray, plagued by internal power struggles and dwindling resources. Meanwhile, Muslim forces under leaders like the Mamluks of Egypt grew stronger. By 1291, the last major Crusader stronghold, Acre, fell to the Mamluks. The Crusaders were driven out of the Holy Land forever. The dream of a permanent Christian kingdom in Jerusalem had come to an end. But the question remains, was this truly the end of the Crusades? Or did their impact continue long after the battles stopped? The end of an era. By the late 13th century, the dream of a permanent Christian kingdom in the Holy Land was over. The Crusaders, once feared and revered warriors of God, had been driven out of the Middle East. Their castles lay in ruins, their alliances shattered, and their legacy stained by centuries of betrayal, broken promises, and bloodshed. But was this truly the end of the Crusades? the legacy of the Crusades. Though the last Crusader stronghold fell in 1291, the impact of these wars would be felt for centuries. The Crusades opened new trade routes between Europe and the Middle East, bringing silk, spices, and knowledge that would fuel the Renaissance. Weakened the Byzantine Empire, leading to its eventual fall to the Ottoman Turks in 1453. Created deep-seated religious tensions that still influence conflicts today. Changed the way warfare was fought, introducing castle fortifications, military orders, and new battle tactics. The Crusader spirit lives on. Even after the Holy Land was lost, the idea of Crusades did not die. Later wars between Christians and Muslims, such as the Reconquista in Spain and the rise of the Ottoman Empire, were seen as extensions of the Crusades. Even centuries later, European powers would justify wars and conquests under the banner of crusading ideals. But beyond the battlefield, the Crusades had a profound psychological impact. To this day, the term crusade is used to describe fights for justice, righteousness, and ideology, proof that these wars, for better or worse, shaped the modern world. Did the Crusades ever really end? So, did the Crusades truly end in 1291? Or did their influence simply evolve into new forms of conflict? Some say that the world is still living in the shadow of the Crusades, with their effects rippling through history in ways few could have predicted. What do you think? Were the Crusades simply wars of faith? Or were they the beginning of something far bigger, something that still echoes in our world today? Stay with us as we continue exploring the forgotten battles, hidden stories, and untold secrets of history. Enjoying the journey through history? Make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our community of history enthusiasts. Don't forget to leave a comment below. Tell us what you think, share your favorite historical insights, or suggest a topic you'd love to see us explore. And if you know someone who would love diving into the past, share this video with them. Let's uncover history together.